Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast. Hello, lovely friend. Dr. Mary here, and welcome to this fabulous episode where I am joined by my wonderful colleague, Dr. Lucy Burns. We have a fabulous topic lined up for today. We're talking all things menopause and perimenopause. Very relevant to everyone, actually, the entire human race. This is a relevant topic. How are you today, lovely Lucy?
I am fabulous, thanks, gorgeous Mary. Really, really well. I have just been nailing my sleep of late, which is always helpful, and it just sets me up for the day. So, yeah, feel great.
Excellent. You have given several fabulous talks on menopause and perimenopause. You've travelled around Australia giving talks on menopause and perimenopause. It's something that you know very, very well about helping women be healthy, stay healthy, get healthy, reclaim health during this period of their lives. So, first of all, could you just let us know what is the difference between menopause and perimenopause? Let's start there. What do we mean by these strange, confusing terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So menopause is actually just one day of your life. It's a bit like your birth date. It's one day, and it's a retrospective date in some ways because it is the day that is 12 months after your last period. So even if your periods have become irregular and you're having them every sort of 6 months, that's not menopause yet. It's a one day, 12 months after your very last period. So, and then once you have that one day, you go then the next day, you're into post-menopause. So you've had your one day, then you become post-menopausal. Up until
I feel like we should have a party on that day. I feel like there should be some sort of celebration, menopause party. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yes. No. Understand. Why not? You have a birthday party, so we should, menopause day. And again, it can be a bit trickier for women that don't have periods, and those women are people that have either had a hysterectomy or an endometrial ablation, or they're using some contraceptive like Mirena, which means you don't have periods. So for some women, they may not know the exact date, but I mean, it's just a nebulous term, really. It was just plucked out of the day, because there's nothing magical that happens before the 12 months versus the day after the 12 months, unlike being born, which is actually an event. So, so before that day of the one day of your life where you suddenly go, oh, I've reached menopause, and then the next day you become postmenopausal, before that day, there's this transition period called perimenopause. And perimenopause is when things start to change. And that period can go from any time, 3 to 4 years is the average, but it can be 10 years. So you can have 10 years of hormonal fluctuation leading up to the one day of your life. Yeah, I know. It can be. And again, we just need to put it into perspective. So 20% of women will have no symptoms around menopause or perimenopause at all. So if you're one of those women, huzzah for you. You're in a minority. You're pretty blessed. And it's, I think, pretty much luck of the draw, although there are some lifestyle factors that can improve the chances of you being in that 20%. We then have, a significant number of women who have some symptoms that are annoying, but transient. They sort of mosey their way through, and it's not that disruptive. It's like everything in medicine. There's always little chunks. And then we have probably 20% of people for whom the changes are severe, like they have severe consequences of these hormonal fluctuations, which can really impair their life, like the quality of their life. So I thought today we'd go through some of these and explain, I guess, one of the things that we get asked the most. We get asked 3 things. Why am I so tired? why am I gaining weight? Why can't I think properly? They would be the three, which is why I do a webinar on that, because they are the three most common topics. And it's why our webinars, we do lots of webinars, lots of masterclasses, but these ones, we get maybe 5 times the amount of people attending these as everything else. So it's clearly a topic that is important and to women and affects women.
I'd argue that it's important to everyone. As I mentioned before, this is a human-wide issue that everybody needs to be aware of.
Yes, you are right. You are right. And men do not have the same hormonal upheaval that women do. They do get hormonal changes as they age. So men aren't immune to changes in that. And when I'm talking about hormones here, we're talking sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Men do get changes in their testosterone levels as they get older. They definitely do. But it is not the same roller coaster upheaval, dramatic switches that happen. And I think it's really important to tell people that these are not, this is just bodily functions. Nobody can control this. This is not women being dramatic. It's not women being hysterical. It's not women being, tedious or flaky or fragile or any of those. This is physiology.
Given that this is physiology, there is still a lot that women can do and that women need to know to help them navigate this path. And even broader, I'd say that society needs to know, that workplaces need to know, that we all need to understand. So to help, 50% of our beautiful population navigate this glorious time of life. And, what would you want to say to these beautiful women, to everybody who wants to help support women go through this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I think, again, if we look at things like how far along we've come with, for example, things like pregnancy and maternity leave. So as an example, many women, when they're pregnant, develop nausea. That can be mild, moderate, severe. If a woman is pregnant, she's vomiting her head off, nobody will say to her, "Oh, just toughen up, will you?" Like, it's physiology, and we now accept it and we now recognize it, and there are legislation in place, there's leave, there's maternity leave, there's all sorts of leave around that because it's physiology. So it's exactly the same with menopause. It's just hormonal changes. Again, that nausea is brought about by hormonal changes, as is other symptoms of menopause or perimenopause. Again, remembering menopause is just the one day. So leading up to it, women get big shifts in estrogen and progesterone. Every month, women have shifts in estrogen and progesterone when they're ovulating. So anybody who is just, a standard woman who's ovulating, who's not taking the oral contraceptive pill, has shifts, which is why, and again, we recognize this. We know it. We know there are mood changes before your period. We know you're hungry before your period, all of those things. But when we have this perimenopause period, it's like those shifts are just amplified. So women can go from having blood levels of estrogen that are high and what would be considered normal, and then they can plummet. And that can happen within a day, which is part of the reason why blood tests around perimenopause are not very helpful. And in fact, most doctors would suggest don't do them because they don't actually tell you anything. Yeah. They might be normal and people are then told, oh, it's not menopause because your bloods are normal. They might be low and people go, oh my God, you've got terrible menopause, but then the next day they're high. So it's really symptoms that we need to go on. So the commonest symptoms that we know, so everybody, I'm assuming, people know about flushes, hot flushes, what we call vasomotor symptoms. So they're hot flushes, or if you're a Northern American, hot flashes. Flushes, they're the same thing. Can be, you can get sweat with it, night sweats. You can get just sleep and sleep disturbance would be a really, really big one, which I myself experienced. I had no idea I was such a great sleeper, and all of a sudden I wasn't. And I thought initially it was just that I was a bit stressed, and then I realized, no, it's actually a menopause symptom. So when you've got those coming in along with potentially irregular cycling, not necessarily though, again, you can still have regular cycles and some of these menopause symptoms. But part of the thing we need to be really mindful of is that not every symptom is menopause or perimenopause. So, for example, I just mentioned night sweats. We need to make sure that those night sweats, they are very common in menopause. They're also common in some other medical conditions, lymphomas, cancers, those sorts of things, thyroid conditions. They're common causes of night sweats. So it's always, therefore, looking at the whole picture, a constellation. We do this a lot in all medical conditions. You can't take one little snippet of information and make a diagnosis.
You need to look at the whole person in front of you.
Absolutely, the whole person. So we know that there is this thing we like to call the metabolic triad, metabolic triad of menopause and perimenopause. So we've just spoken a bit about estrogen. Estrogen we know fluctuates and then declines. That's what it does, go up, down, up, down, up, down, oh, clonk out. You don't get no estrogen, but you get a massive decline. So you go from, say 100% of your estrogen down to about 25, 30%. We know that as estrogen declines, we will get an increase in insulin levels. Estrogen is a very good protector against insulin resistance. And we also know that as estrogen declines, we will often get a rise in cortisol. And it's twofold, this rise in cortisol. One is as estrogen declines, we just do. We naturally get a rise in cortisol. We also know that women going through menopause are often in the busiest phase of their life. They've often they're juggling work, kids, dogs, parents, bills, all the things, meals, dentists. They're juggling a lot, wearing all the hats, yes. And for those, and very little time to themselves, and maybe the time to themselves, they're sitting, watching telly late at night, maybe having a glass of wine to unwind, which is not actually rest as much as we would love it. So they then have naturally high cortisol levels. And then we know that the higher your cortisol, the lower your estrogen. And we know that the higher your cortisol, the higher your insulin. And we know that the higher your insulin, the higher your cortisol. And this cycle, this sort of just thing goes on, which therefore, when we have high circulating insulin, higher insulin than we would like, we know three things happen. One, you will gain weight around your middle. That's what happens. Two, you will feel tired because you don't have access to your fuel stores. And three, it will increase your brain fog because insulin resistance can also happen at a brain level, which means your brain just isn't firing as fast as it could. So therefore we go, right, next steps, what do I do about this? Thank you very much for all this information. Dr. Lucy, Dr. Mary, what the hell do I do? Maz, what would you recommend?
Yes, so I would recommend starting with something that is, small and doable, looking at what are the small steps that you can take to start improving this metabolic triad. So instead of spiraling downwards in a vicious cycle of horrible, you can actually start spiraling upwards towards good health, good energy, better mood, better weight management. And, there are the small doable steps that you can find. And Lucy, what would they be?
Yeah, so we have the 4 S's I think are really important to counter this triad. So the 4 S's, sustenance, which is, we don't actually usually refer to it as that, but it fits in the S word. So sustenance is your nutrition. And for us, of course, the easiest, best, most effective way to lower insulin levels using nutrition is to reduce your sugars and starches. So for us, whole food, low carbohydrate. We want to optimize sleep. So again, if you're going to bed at midnight every night, then probably not ideal. We really want you to be prioritizing going to bed on time. I know it can feel hard and I get it, but you will feel so much better the following days if you've managed to go to bed earlier. Number 2, so we've got sustenance, sleep, strength training, which again, building muscle is so helpful to reducing insulin levels. Building muscle, so doing some resistance work, also will overall lower your stress levels, so overall improve your cortisol. Building muscle counters the effect of declining estrogen. And then the 4th S is stress management. And I'm going to add skills there because most people think stress management is the absence of stressors. So, manage the external stressors, but it's actually not. It's managing the way you respond to stress in your life. And as we said earlier or last week, life doesn't throw you curveballs. Life is a curveball. It is always there, busy. Things happen, pop up all the time. So therefore, 4 S's, strength. So we've got sustenance, sleep, strength, stress. The 5th arm for this, and again, if you listen to our podcast from last week, it's not this or that. It's not lifestyle or medicine. So the 5th arm may be MHT for you. So menopause hormonal therapy is an adjunct. It doesn't replace lifestyle, but what it can do is help people implement lifestyle. If you're going to bed at 10 o'clock but still waking up at 3 a.m. with night sweats and hot and you can't get comfortable and your bones ache, then me telling you to go to bed earlier isn't actually going to be helpful. So you may need MHT as well. Again, for people that are unable to take it for various reasons, breast cancers and whatnot, then this is where you double down on your lifestyle stuff and really make sure you nail it as much as possible. It is not this or that. It is this and that. Lifestyle, sustenance, strength, sleep, stress management skills, super important to improve your symptoms from menopause. And so for you in the now and for you in the future, plus or minus MHT to help you implement those and feel better. So my lovely ones, we are going to be continuing this conversation on menopause and perimenopause in the future. I have some amazing guests lined up. We're going to be talking about it, not nonstop, but certainly a significant chunk, because we do know that this is a problem that is pertinent to very, very many people, or as Dr. Mary has said, all people.
All people.
Indeed. Take care, gorgeous ones. Bye for now.
See ya.
The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualised medical advice, diagnosis or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.